Rachel's Dream, written by Marcus Wilson, narrated by Michelle Araya. It is nighttime. On the second floor of Rachel's family's house, the hallway light is shining, and there is the sound of a party coming from downstairs. The party music is blasting. Rachel's door is cracked. She stands near the door and can hear the party going on downstairs. She starts to open the door to go downstairs to the party, but then she takes a deep breath, turns around, and gets onto her bed holding her forehead. She then takes a deep breath as if she felt sick. The wind from Rachel's window blows the white silk curtains. The hallway light continues to pour in through Rachel's partially cracked door. Rachel lies there on her bed. She has her arms behind her head. The lamp from her nightstand is shining and lighting the room. Minutes later, Rachel decides to get up out of her bed and locks the bedroom door. The party music has stopped. Rachel starts getting undressed and ready for bed. She walks over to her dresser and grabs a framed picture of Michael, a male in his late 20s. He is her boyfriend. She observes it for about 11 seconds. In the background of the picture are two males, Jason and another, in their late 20s, but Michael stands out so much you can hardly see them. Rachel sits the picture back onto her dresser. As Rachel goes to the next item, there is a rubber rat on the dresser. To the right of it, Rachel picks up another picture. Also on the dresser, in the background, is a green stuffed alien and a small, black and shiny model car. The picture is of her friend Teresa. Rachel then puts it back onto the dresser. She goes over and opens her window slightly to get some fresh air. The wind blows her white silk curtains. She then gets into bed. Rachel turns out the lamp and goes to sleep. It is nighttime. There is a full moon with lots of stars in the sky with the sound of crickets in the background. There is the appearance of a nice, clean neighborhood. In that neighborhood, there is a house where light from the kitchen is seen through the window. It is where Rachel and her boyfriend Michael are inhabiting. Inside the kitchen, they are holding their drinks, laughing and kissing each other. Rachel looks up and sees the clock. It reads 11:11. There is a calendar near it, and it shows the month of May with all the days crossed off until Monday the 28th. Michael says,
"Too bad you couldn't make it to the party last night."
Rachel says, "Yeah, I know. Next time when I'm feeling better I'll go, okay?" They kiss. Rachel asks again, "Okay?" Michael kisses Rachel in increments while saying,
"That is fair enough."
Rachel says, "Well, I think it's about time for me to get going. You do know that I have school tomorrow." Michael says,
"Oh, come on. Stay a little longer."
"But I have—"
"Just one quick movie, and then you can go, okay?"
"Okay, but we're going to have to make it quick, and nothing too long."
"Excellent. We'll pick out the perfect movie."
Michael pulls her by the arm into the living room. They arrive in the living room. Michael is walking toward the movie shelf and says,
"So, where are you and your family going tomorrow? Didn't you say Disneyland or something?"
Rachel ponders. Rachel says, "I'm not sure. My father said it's supposed to be a secret, so we could be going to another planet or something for all I know." Rachel observes around his living room and sees on the wall pictures of the people that she saw on her dresser, but different ones, taken at different places and times. Michael asks,
"You mean you have to wait all the way till you get there to know what it is?"
Rachel says sarcastically, "Yes, that's right."
"That sucks."
Rachel says, "Yeah, but I'm sure it's worth the wait." Michael says, while moving his finger across a series of videotapes, "Aha!" It is an alien movie. He turns around and shows her the tape, which shows a horrifying picture of a green alien with big, black, shining eyes and teeth grinning like a tiger. Michael, smiling, says, "The perfect movie." Rachel turns her head in fear. Immediately, Michael goes up to her with concern. Michael, grinning, asks, "What's wrong?" Rachel, fearful, says, "You know I can't watch stuff like that." "Oh, come on. It's just a movie. It's not like it's going to jump out of the TV and bite you." He goes to hug her. "Come on, just this once, and then you can go home." Rachel says, "Okay, but you have to promise." Michael asks, "Promise what?" "That this is the last time we watch one of those movies." Michael says, "Okay, I promise." She walks to the couch, placing her red purse at the end of it in order to sit down. Michael puts the tape in, and he joins her on the couch. He kisses her on the cheek. They hold hands and watch. The clock reads 9:59. It is morning. There is the appearance of a nice, clean neighborhood, different than Michael's, with nice sidewalks, perfect lawns, and beautiful trees. There is the sound of birds chirping and cars driving. In the neighborhood, there is a house, and through the window, there is Rachel inside her room. It is a different bedroom than before. Music is blasting. Her red purse from when she was with her boyfriend is on the nightstand. She is putting on her clothes, looking in the mirror. By the reflection of the mirror, she sees a little stuffed alien lying on the rug near her bed, which resembled the one on her dresser in the beginning, but slightly different. She gets a little dizzy from noticing it. Rachel goes over to pick it up, looks at it, sighs and yells, "Johnny!" Johnny runs in from his room. Johnny asks, "What?" Rachel shows him the alien. Rachel asks, "Why is this in my room?" He gestures. He doesn't know. Rachel says, "Here, take it." She throws it to him with force, and it hits him in the face. He starts crying, running to Mommy. Johnny reaches the other room with Mommy and says while pouting, "Mommy, Rachel's being mean again." Mother yells, "Rachel, be nice to your brother now. We talked about that last week, remember?" Being shocked and angry by Johnny's reaction and the voice of her mother, she takes a deep breath, goes over, and shuts her bedroom door. Rachel begins packing her suitcase. She begins putting on her makeup. Thwoosh! The door downstairs closes. She goes over to her window and looks out. There, her mother, her father, and her little brother are getting into the car for work, and her little brother for school. She puts her book bag over her shoulder and goes to finish her makeup. Rachel finishes up, walks out of the room toward the hallway. On the way, she walks past Johnny's room. Inside Johnny's room, the stuffed alien is on his shelf. Rachel sees it and sighs, "Damn dolls." She walks down the stairs into the kitchen. From the kitchen, she goes out the door, locking it behind her. It is still morning. It is windy, and dark gray clouds are blocking the sun. She begins walking down the sidewalk toward school. Mr. Richardson, who is about 60 years of age, with a suit and hat, drives by. He slows down and drives slowly as Rachel walks along the sidewalk. He asks while smiling, "So how are you doing today, young lady?" Rachel, smiling, says, "Hi, Mr. Richardson. I'm doing well. And you?" Mr. Richardson says confidently, "Couldn't be better." Rachel smiles. He looks in his rearview mirror and sees someone pulling up behind him. Mr. Richardson says, "Well, you walk safely, you hear? And tell your mother I said hello. Talk to you later." He waves bye. Rachel, smiling, says, "Okay, bye." She smiles and waves bye. The cars drive away. As she continued walking, something seemed to be watching her from the sky like a UFO. The sky quietly thunders. Rachel continues walking and peeks up. She is now just outside of the school, but before she went in, 2 guys sitting outside said hello to her. Rachel is now inside the school hallway at her locker. Teresa comes up to Rachel. Teresa, grinning, asks, "So, how'd it go?" Rachel, grabbing her books, asks, "How'd what go?" "Your date." Rachel stops to think. "Oh, my date? Well, let's see. I guess it went okay." Teresa asks, "Okay? Then what did you guys do?" Rachel, grabbing her books, says, we went to his place. Watched a movie." Teresa is smiling. Teresa says, "Well, anyway, after school, are you still going jogging? Because me, Samantha, and Pam are all going to the movies, and we were wondering if you'd like to come." Rachel ponders and says, "Oh, I don't know." "Oh, come on. Quit being such a puss. It'll be fun." "Okay, I guess I can go. I should be jogging at around that time, so you can just stop by and pick me up." She closes her locker. Teresa, grinning, says, "Excellent." A rat crawls down the hallway. Rachel and Teresa begin walking together to class. Teresa asks, "So, you said you guys watched a movie. What else? What movie did you guys see?" Rachel ponders, and then has a flashback of seeing the cover of the video. As Rachel ponders, tears start coming down her eyes at the remembrance of it. Rachel says, "I'd rather not talk about it." Teresa says, "Oh no, go ahead. Was it scary? Horror? And come to mention, I had a cool dream last night. You were in it. Want to hear?" Rachel sadly says, "Yes, very scary. And no, maybe some other time. You know how I am about dreams. Why are you always so scared of everything?" Rachel says, "Hey, I'll see you in lunch, okay?" They head their separate ways. Teresa says, "Yeah, sure. See you in lunch." It is hours later, and they are in the school cafeteria. Rachel carries her lunch and sits down at an all-girl table along with her friend Teresa. But as she sits down, she looks out her cafeteria window and sees what looks like partially a UFO in the sky, but it's barely noticeable. Teresa asks, "Hey guys, want to hear something cool?" The crowd asks, "What?" Teresa says, "I had this weird dream last night." They all look at each other, except for Rachel. She seems to not be interested, and slightly afraid. The crowd says, "Go ahead, tell it. Let's hear it." Teresa says, "Okay, Rachel, you were in it." Teresa looks at Rachel. Rachel starts looking a little angry. She then has a flashback of her and her boyfriend lying beside her asleep on the couch in his home. Teresa continues saying, "And it was nighttime, and I believe we were coming from the movies or something, and you—" Teresa points to Rachel. "We're on the sidewalk crying." All the girls at the table look at each other in shock and smiling. Teresa continues saying, "So I came up to you and asked you what was wrong, and then you showed me your hands." Teresa shows her hands to the crowd. "And they were made of waffles." The ladies laugh. Teresa continues saying, "Anyways, I knew you didn't like waffles, but I told you to eat them anyway, and your hands would grow back. God knows how I knew that. But anyways, you started to eat them, and sure enough, your hands grew back." Teresa smiles. The crowd laughs. The crowd says, "That's weird." Rachel is not laughing. Teresa, smiling, says, "No, I'm serious. That really was my dream." Looking angry, Rachel gets up from the table and heads to the restroom. The crowd asks, "What's wrong?" Teresa gestures that she doesn't know. In the restroom, Rachel is looking in the mirror and wiping the tears from her face. She says, "Gosh, I hate it when she does that. She knows I frickin' hate dreams. How could she do something like that?" But as she looks in the mirror, and in its reflection, She sees through the restroom window a spaceship landing from the sky onto the schoolyard grass. She stops and looks at the reflection with wonder. 2 aliens come out, walking on the grass and toward the restroom window. In the cafeteria, Teresa looks over at the restroom door. She gets up from the table and says, "Hey guys, I'll be back." It is a sunny day. Rachael is jogging down the sidewalk. She's wearing tights, listening to her Walkman, and has a jug of water in her hand. Mr. Richardson drives past, and Rachael waves. But as Rachael runs, she does so too much and starts to look dizzy. The music starts to go in slow motion. She slowly passes out, begins to fall forward. She drops her jug of water and it splashes onto the concrete. It is nighttime. There is a wide and long highway. On both sides of the highway are sand, like a beach, followed by the sea, also on both sides. The moon beats against the sea. Rachael awakes. She's laying face down on the right side of the pure black street. She slowly gets up, confused, looking all around her. She looks up and sees that there are 2 moons in the sky, one on one side of the sea, the other on the opposite side. She turns around and sees nothing but the dark road, the sand, and the sea. Rachael takes a deep breath. Rachael spins around, looking around, confused. Rachael shouts, "Hey! Somebody!" As Rachael turned around, boom! Rachael stops. Directly in front of her is the face of a tall, skinny green alien with big, black, shiny, slanted, demonic eyes. It is looking at Rachael directly in the face. Rachel's terrified and couldn't catch her breath. She continues to look the alien in the eye. Her reflection shines in the reflection of his big black eyes. She catches her breath and moves to the side of him, trying to slowly sneak past while watching him. He even turns his head toward her as she tries. When she has her back toward him, she begins to run. All of a sudden, there is a stationed car on the highway in front of her with its headlights on. It is a black, shiny car with tinted windows and shiny silver rims. She sees it and catches her breath. She looks back, and the alien is gone. Rachael stops and looks around in wonder where it has gone. She then runs toward the passenger side of the car to see if anyone is in it. Inside, the keys are in the ignition, and upbeat party music is playing through the speakers. Rachael sees the keys and immediately starts to run to the other side of the car to get in and take off. As she turns around, there is the alien staring her in the face. Rachael takes a deep, terrified breath and watches him closely as she runs to get into the driver's side of the car. As she watches the alien, its eyes turn red. Rachael opens the door and gets in. She starts the car. The alien watches her. She puts it in gear. The alien continues to watch her. She takes off. Rachael catches her breath. She adjusts her rearview mirror to see the alien. It is still in the same place. The car speeds down the highway. As the alien stares, the reflection of the car moving away down the highway is seen through its big black eyes. The speedometer increases past 38 miles per hour. Rachael looks ahead to see where she's heading. She then looks back in her mirror. The alien appears to get smaller and smaller. The alien's mouth is now partially opened. It opens its mouth wider. Its teeth is pure white and sharp like a lion. It opens its mouth all the way, and like a tiger, it hisses at the car. All of a sudden, the alien takes off running toward the car at great speeds. Rachael is looking ahead to see where she's going. The highway appears to be endless. She looks in the rearview mirror again, and the alien is too small and far away to see. Her speed increases past 60 miles per hour. Rachael looks ahead to see where she's going. About a minute later, she glances back up in the mirror. Suddenly, in the far distance, she vaguely sees the alien. The alien is running on all fours like a tiger. As she stares into the mirror, she finally sees it running towards her. She is terrified. Rachael starts complaining and says, "Oh God, no!" She looks at her speed. She is going 100 miles per hour. The alien is running faster on all fours. Rachael looks back in the mirror. It is so close. There is a thump. It hits the rear window with its claws and cracks the glass. Rachael screams. After the alien hit and cracked the window, it stopped as the car zoomed away. With the car's reflection in the alien's big black eyes, it opens its mouth and speaks in a very deep voice. It says, "Get out of my world." As Rachael looks in the mirror, she sees it is gone. She looks ahead and suddenly hits a black wall that shatters and looks as if light was behind it. The car comes into a place out in the air, as if it popped out of a bubble. The dimension shakes back into place. The car lands onto the concrete in an alleyway in a big city. She brakes, and the car skids to a stop. She takes a deep breath, looks ahead, and sees a fence. Behind her is the continuance of the alleyway. Looking around, she gets out the car. She looks at the keys and puts them in her pocket. Rachael is breathing heavily and confused. There's a black cat with green eyes looking at her, wondering, near the trash. A ball of trash paper rolls by. Rachael looks over and slowly heads towards the place in space, in the air, where she came out from. Nothing appears to be there, but she stretches out her arm to see if it would pass back through the dimension. It did not. To her, everything appears to be normal. The cat crawls, watching her. Rachael then begins walking towards the fence. Behind it is a normal city street with a sidewalk near the fence. She slightly looks to her right. She sees a payphone on the side of the building on the other side of the fence. Boom! A car rushes by in the street on the other side. "Honk!" from a car behind. The driver in the car behind shouts, "You mother!" Both drivers stop just past the fence. They stop just ahead, but she can't see it because of the building blocking the view. The two drivers are angry at each other. Inside the car closest to the fence, and on the passenger side, is an innocent-looking lady in her late 20s. She begs her boyfriend to not cause any trouble. The lady says, "Oh, honey, please don't cause any trouble." Rachael stands there at the fence, listening with wonder and fear. However, the driver gets out of the car anyway, slams the door, and goes toward the car, yelling and pointing at whoever is in the first car. He says, "You motherfucker! What the hell are you doing?" Boom! Boom! The guy that got out of the car is shot. He falls backwards and hits his head on the front of his car. There he lies. The lady in the passenger seat is screaming and holding her chest. Arrgh! The car takes off. And all this time, Rachael only hears the commotion because the building is blocking the view. The lady gets out of her car, screaming and carrying a red purse with a large silver button. She runs over with her red high heels to her boyfriend. The lady shouts, "Oh my God! Somebody help!" He's dead. She then runs over to the payphone that Rachael saw on the opposite side of the fence on the building. Nervously, she reaches into her purse and grabs the change. She is mourning and drops a coin. She picks it back up and puts it in. The lady calls 911 and says, "Yes, hello? My boyfriend was shot." Dispatcher says, "Okay, ma'am, remain calm. Where are you?" She looks and sees the street sign. "West College Street." "Is your boyfriend still alive, ma'am?" "No, he's not. Somebody shot him." "Okay, who shot him, ma'am? Do you know who this person is?" "I don't know. He just took off with his car." "Okay, ma'am, we will be there shortly. You sit tight and get somewhere safe." As she hangs up the phone, Rachael watches her nervously pull out a cigarette. The girl has her back turned toward the street and she's facing the fence, but because of everything that just happened, she does not notice Rachael. Suddenly, there is the sound of a car backing up and skidding to a stop just behind the building where the commotion started. There is the sound of a door shutting. Suddenly, a guy with a pipe comes around the corner. He appears to be angry. Rachael sees him, but the lady smoking the cigarette does not because she has her back towards the street. Rachael starts shaking the fence. "Hey! Watch out! Hey!" The lady quickly looks at Rachael and finally sees her, but the guy comes up behind and begins to beat her with the pipe. She drops her purse and cigarette. She's putting her arms up, trying to defend herself. She screams and yells. The guy continues to beat her with the pipe. She falls to the concrete. Blood gushes all over her. Lying on the ground, she grabs hold of the fence. She gets knocked unconscious. The guy notices that she stops screaming. He quickly looks through the alleyway where Rachael is standing. Fearfully, Rachael looks directly at him. She could not move. She was too scared and breathing heavily. The guy glances back and then begins to climb the fence with the pole in his hand. Rachael slowly backs away. When he got over the fence, he looks back to see if anyone was coming. Rachael now has her back against the building. The guy seems to not see her. Rachael watches him, breathing heavily and standing against the wall. When his back was to Rachael, he stops. He starts to grin as he corners his eyes toward her. Suddenly, he transforms into that alien. Rachel's eyes open wide. She moves against the building and begins to run toward the fence. The alien rushes after her. She climbs it and falls onto the concrete. The alien just misses her. Quickly, Rachael turns around and looks back. Suddenly, there is no fence, no payphone, and no lady, but only an old, empty, and dark building. She is shocked. Rachael stops to think. She reaches into her pocket. She realizes they are empty. The keys are gone. She starts becoming tearful. She starts breathing heavily. Rachael starts turning around and around, steps in the street and shouts, "Somebody help me, please!" "Honk!" Driver shouts. "Get out of the street, you asshole!" The car zooms by, just missing her. Another car is driving by. It is Mr. Richardson. He notices Rachael, pulls over and parks on the side of the street. Mr. Richardson says, "Hey, Rachael, is that you? What are you doing all the way out here?" She looks both ways before she heads toward the car. A car zooms by. She looks both ways again, and then goes towards the car. Mr. Richardson looks at her with concern. Mr. Richardson says, "Hop in." Rachael gets in the car. She starts crying and telling him everything she's seen. Mr. Richardson parks the car and watches her with concern. Rachael cries out, "I don't know what's going on. Everything that's been happening, someone or something was chasing me and tried to kill me, and..." She looks around and sees the dark, empty building. "And there was this woman?" Rachael starts crying. Mr. Richardson puts his arm around her. "We're going to take you home, okay?" As Rachael cries, he puts the car in gear and drives away. Rachael sits back in her seat, takes a deep breath, and looks out the window. Sometime later, they arrive, and Mr. Richardson is dropping her off at her house. Rachael appears to be feeling better and says, "Thank you." She gets out and waves bye. Mr. Richardson waves bye. He then takes off. From inside the house, her mother looks out the window and sees Rachael waving bye. She watches Rachael as she walks toward the house. As Rachael walks with her head down, she looks up and sees her mother in the window washing dishes. Rachael reaches the door. Her mother turns her head and sees Rachael coming in the door. When Rachael steps in, Rachael stops and looks. She then closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. Her mother looks at the mechanical clock. It reads about 6:30. Mother asks, "What are you doing home so late? And why did your teacher drop you off? Mom, you would not believe what happened. She stops washing dishes and begins to dry her hands. Mother asks, What? What did you see, honey? They sit at the kitchen table. Rachael says, I don't know. She ponders and thinks for about 5 seconds. She continues to say, I really don't know. I was jogging, and the next thing you know, I was on some highway, and this green, creature thing started chasing me. It had big, black, shiny eyes, and it was staring me right in the face. And there was a car, and I drove away. Mother says, I understand, sweetie. She gets up from the table and starts doing dishes again. Rachael pauses and looks at her surprised. Mother says, Yep, that's what your grandmother used to go through. Rachael, still confused, asks, What? Mother says, At about your age, she started hallucinating, and they had to send her to a psychiatric institution. I was worried that it might happen to you. Rachael ponders and asks, Grandmother had hallucinations? Why didn't you tell me this before? So, you mean all of it wasn't real? Oh no, sweetie. They were just hallucinations. Rachael ponders. Rachael asks, So what am I supposed to do? Well, the best thing to do is to get some sleep. That's what your grandmother used to say. Rachael says, But she's dead. And what if the same thing happens to me? Her mother turns around, walks over to her and says, Oh no, sweetie. Everything's going to be okay. Daddy and I will take care of you, okay? Her mother initiates and they hug. Mother says, Now, you go on upstairs and get some rest. You have a big day tomorrow. Rachael walks upstairs to her room. Rachael is still confused and says to herself, Hallucinations? It can't be. Hours later, it is now nighttime. In the dining room and eating dinner are Rachael, her younger brother, her older brother, her mother, and her father. Everyone is quiet, eating, and looking at Rachael. The older brother looks skeptical and asks, So, Rachael, how'd you manage to escape? I don't know. I just kept running. Johnny asks, What do you look like, Rachael? Rachael glances at her mother, then looks back at Johnny and says, Green, with black eyes, tall, skinny, scary. Mother says, Johnny, Rachael didn't really see anything. She was just hallucinating like grandmother. Rachael rolls her eyes with anger and then says, And how would you know? Were you there? Mother says, We talked about this, sweetie. Rachael interrupts and says, I don't get it. You guys are supposed to be my family, and you say I was hallucinating. I had a big alien chasing me back there, and there was a woman that was beaten to death with a pipe. I know what I saw, and it was real. Mother looks at the family, and they all look at each other. Mother says, No, it was not, sweetie. We already talked about that. Rachael asks, And how would you know, Mom? Mother says, It's not about what you know, Rachael. All of us here love you, and we're here to help you through it. They all look at each other, and then back at Rachael. Rachael says, Now you're looking at me like I'm crazy. Mother says, Rachael, you have to know there's nothing to be afraid of. It wasn't real. Rachael starts yelling, But you weren't there. If it wasn't real, then how'd I end up way out in the city? Did I walk there? Did the bus take me there? There is silence. Mother says, We know it's hard for you to accept this, Rachael, knowing that you've spent 18 years experimenting with your eyes, like all of us do, and now, yes, all of a sudden you start seeing things. Your father and I knew this might happen because we know that hallucinations run in the family. Of course, it will be hard for you to accept at first, but you have to realize that everything you experienced today was just your imagination. Rachel jumps up. Rachael angrily says, "And what if it's not? You have no idea what it's like. None of you." Mother says, "Rachael, sit down, please." She leaves the table and heads upstairs to her room. Her mother looks at the father. Father says,
"She'll get over it. She's a big girl."
Rachael is in her room. Her room is now different from the one before, but she does not seem to realize it. She jumps onto her bed, the clock reads 7:43 p.m., and then gets back up to shut her door. She locks it and jumps back onto her bed. As she lies there, she has flashbacks of her experience and starts crying. Rachael says, "Oh God, please don't let me see any more." It is hours later, and Rachael is asleep and in the same position. Knock, knock, knock. She slowly opens her eyes. Knock, knock, knock. It is the sound of her mother. "Rachael? Are you in there? Open up, it's me." Rachael is tired and slowly getting out of bed. She says, "What do you want?" Mother says, "I just want to talk to you. Open up." Rubbing her eyes, she heads toward the door. Mother says again, "Rachael, open up. It's me, your mother." Rachael stops at the door and begins to think. She looks at her clock. It says 1:23 a.m. She becomes more awake. Putting her ear to the door, Rachael asks, "What do you want?" There's no answer. Rachael asks, "Mom?" She pauses to hear, but there's silence. Rachael slowly begins to unlock the door. She cracks it and peeks out into the hallway. "Mom!" She opens it all the way, looking out into the hallway. Mother is not there. She begins walking out. Down the hallway is the bathroom door. It slams shut, and there is no light turned on inside. Rachael is scared. She walks slowly to the bathroom door. She can hear water running in the bathroom. She's now at the door. The water is still running. She slowly reaches for the knob. Boom! There appeared little Johnny to the left of Rachael. Rachael jumps, looks to her left, and begins breathing heavily. She holds her chest. Rachael, whispering, says, "Don't do that." Johnny asks, "Can I go to the bathroom before you? I really have to go." Rachael, still whispering and holding Johnny on the shoulders, asks, "Where's Mommy?" Johnny says, "I don't know. I heard banging and I awoke. And then I had to go to the bathroom." Rachael slowly starts opening the door and points at Johnny to wait. He looks up at her. After the door is open, Rachael flicks on the light switch. The shower curtain moves. Johnny comes in and is about to use the bathroom, but Rachael whispers and says, "Wait." She slowly goes toward the shower curtain. When she arrives, she quickly spreads it open. There is nothing. Johnny asks, "What's wrong, Rachael?" Rachael releases her breath and says, "Nothing." She begins to walk out. Rachael starts opening the cabinets and says, "Go ahead and use the bathroom." But as she walked past the mirror, what was supposed to be Johnny's reflection was the alien's. However, Rachael did not notice. She leaves the bathroom and shuts the door behind her. As she starts to head back to her room, she has the thought to spy on Johnny. Therefore, she steps inside her room and then peeks out into the hallway at the bathroom door, waiting for him to come out. She hears the toilet flush. She then hears the water run. The water turns off. After about 30 seconds, the door opens and out comes Johnny. Rachael watches. Johnny looks both ways and begins to walk down the hallway. He walks past his room, therefore Rachael steps out and begins to follow him. For some reason, he opens the attic door and goes upstairs. Rachael hears him walking up the stairs. After about a few steps, Rachael hears him take no more. Therefore, she slowly goes toward the attic stairway and slowly peeks around the corner. On the stairs, there is no one. She flicks on the light to get a better view, and there is still no one. Rachael asks, "Johnny?" Rachael then runs to her older brother's room. He's asleep. She then runs to Johnny's room. And there, in the bed, is Johnny sound asleep. Rachael then looks back towards the attic door. It is now closed. Slowly she walks toward it. When she arrives, she tries to open it, but it is locked. Suddenly, behind her, there appears her mother and father. Mother asks, "Rachael, what are you doing?" She jumps and quickly turns around. Rachael's father looks very angry. Rachael starts becoming tearful and says, "Johnny's in here." Mother asks, "Who's in there?" "Johnny. I saw him go in here." Mother says, "No, Rachael. Johnny is in his room asleep." "Yes, but I saw someone. Something went in here." The father looks at the mother and says to the mother, "I'll take care of this. You go on back to bed." Rachael starts crying and beating against the door. "But he's in there." Mother asks, "Who's in there, Rachael? Johnny's asleep." Rachael cries out, "The alien! I want us to catch him." Father gives a ridiculous look. He gets really angry and yells, "Okay, Rachael, cut the crap." He runs over to the door, hits it, and shouts, "There are no aliens." He turns the knob and the door does not open. The father shouts, "You see, it's locked. It's been ever since we moved here." Rachael cries out, "But Daddy, it went in here. I saw him." The father gets more angry. "You want to see an alien?" He starts rolling up his sleeves. "Huh? You want to see a fucking alien?" Rachael then pauses, wondering what is wrong with him and why he is acting different. Suddenly, he then punches her in the face. Rachael starts screaming and crying. Rachael's mother looks sad. He continues to punch her in the face. She puts her hands up to defend herself, but he punches her even harder. Father, beating her, shouts, "I'm the fucking alien, Rachael. What are you gonna do, huh?" Blood gushes all over her face. Her teeth are nearly broken. Her younger and older brother come out and watch, worried for her. With blood dripping from her nose and bruises all over her face, she manages to escape. She runs down the hallway. All of her family together watch her run away, and they are grinning as if they don't care. Suddenly, in their eyes and face, there is the impression that they are all aliens. She runs down the stairs and out the door. Suddenly, the lights in Rachael's house go out. Rachael is bleeding, screaming, and crying, "Somebody help me!" But all is quiet. Rachael begins running down the sidewalk. After she runs so far, she stops. She looks down at the sidewalk with wonder. There, lying on the sidewalk, is herself, with the jug of water and Walkman. She slowly moves closer to it, looking with concern. Her eyes are closed, as if she is passed out. She leans over to touch herself, to touch her hair, but her hand goes straight through. She then gets on her knees and begins feeling all over with both hands, which are passing through as if it were a holographic image. Rachael looks around the neighborhood and then slowly leans down to put her whole body in the exact position, as if to possess herself. Out of the house comes her 4 family members. They have green alien heads, but a normal body. Johnny points to her, and the whole family starts running towards her. Suddenly, from Rachel's point of view, it is now daytime. Rachael awakes from lying on the sidewalk, from where she fell before when she was jogging. She lifts herself up and grabs her bottle and Walkman. She feels her face. There are no bruises or scars. As she observes herself, her friend Teresa suddenly pulls up in a car, along with Samantha in the passenger seat and Pam in the back. Teresa yells out, "Hey, Rachael, are you ready?" Rachael is in shocking wonderment. All 4 of them are now in the car. Teresa is driving. Rachael is quiet. Teresa, laughing, says, "If that was me, Rachael, I would have went and knocked on someone's door or something, or at least ran into someone's house." Samantha and Pam are smiling and say, "Yeah." Rachael says, "I knew you wouldn't believe me." Teresa says, "Thank God it wasn't real." Rachael does not smile. They pull up at the movie parking lot. Rachael looks out the window. She sees the movie theater and all the people. They park. They head out towards the theater. When they arrive inside, Rachael looks around and sees all the people. Her friends are giggling and having a good time. Teresa pays for the tickets. They order their drinks and popcorn as Rachael continues to look around. Teresa looks at her and asks, "Rachael, aren't you getting anything?" Rachael says, "No, thanks." Afterwards, they are now walking down the aisle going to the movie. Teresa walks beside Rachael. Teresa says, "Hey, sorry about lunch today, okay?" Rachael, looking around, says, "That's okay." She starts thinking and then asks, "Hey, Teresa, can I ask you a question?" Teresa, eating popcorn, says, "Sure, what?" "You know, in school today, when I got up to go to the restroom?" "Yeah?" "What did I do after that?" "What do you mean?" "Did I come out?" "I don't know. Why do you ask?" "I just don't remember coming out. The last thing I remember is when—" Teresa interrupts. "Oh, it'll come to you. Come on, let's get seats." They head into the theater. They all sit down to watch the movie and eat popcorn. Rachael continues to think. Hours later, the movie is now over. Teresa asks Rachael, "You ready?" Everyone is leaving the movie theater. All 3 of the girls are getting up to leave, and Teresa is letting Rachael go ahead of her. Rachael quickly looks up at Teresa. Rachael asks, "What?" Teresa says, "Movie's over." Rachael, quickly getting up, says, "Oh." Samantha and Pam are talking about the movie. Sometime later, it is nighttime. Teresa is driving, and they are pulling up to Rachel's house. Rachael gets out of the car. Teresa says, "See you later. You get some good rest. Looks like you need it." Rachael says, "Yeah, thanks." Pam says, "Bye, Rachael." Samantha says, "Bye, Rachael. See you in school Monday." She heads back to her house. When she arrives, she sees her mother through the kitchen window, washing dishes like before. She begins to walk slower. Her mother watches her through the window. Slowly, she walks to the door. Her mother watches her come in. Mother asks, "So, what'd you guys see?" Rachael ponders and looks confused. "I don't remember." Her father comes downstairs. Rachael looks at her father with shock. She's scared to see him. "Father," smiling, says excitedly, "It's all finished." Mother looks back at him, smiling. She then looks at Rachael. Mother, smiling, asks, "Are you ready to see it, Rachael?" Rachael, confused, says, "Sure. See what?" The father heads back upstairs. They follow behind him. They walk past Johnny's room, but it is empty. They go to the attic. Rachael looks down to see if her blood is on the carpet. It isn't. They head upstairs into the attic. Just before Rachael sees what's upstairs, the mother says, "Oh, that's beautiful, Rick." Just missing the paint on the step, Rachael finally arrives and sees it. Father asks, "You like it?" Rachael is shocked at what she sees. Her father has made a painting on the wall, and on it is painted pictures of everything that Rachael went through after she passed out on the sidewalk. She sees the highway and the alien. She sees the fence and the girl on the phone. She sees it all. Her father begins cleaning things up. Rachael and her mother continue to look at the painting. Suddenly, her father falls and slips on some paint. He falls down the stairs. They turn around and are shocked. Minutes later, the ambulance arrive and take him on a stretcher. Rachael and her mother are watching. When the ambulance crew are outside, Rachael and her mother follow behind them. But as they come out the door, Rachael asks, "Wait, what about Johnny?" Mother, locking the door, asks, "Johnny? Honey, who's Johnny?" Rachael says, "My little brother." Mother says, "What? You don't have a brother, sweetie. Where'd you get that idea?" Rachael stops to think. A short time later, Rachael and her mother are in the car heading toward the hospital. Mother asks, "So, where'd you come up with the idea that you had a brother?" Rachael says, "Oh, it's nothing." As they ride in the car, Rachael looks out the window. They drive past the 2 cars that stopped near the fence. Rachael sees the 2 cars park on the side. They are the same people as before. It was as if the same thing was happening over, but this time at night. As they continue to drive past, Rachael sees the angry guy walking down the street with the pipe. She sits back in her seat and closes her eyes. Sometime later, Rachael and her mother are checking into the hospital. Afterwards, they're in the lobby, sitting beside each other, waiting for the news about Father. Straight ahead, there's a boy and girl's restroom. Rachael closes her eyes, holds her forehead with both hands, and looks down. Her mother looks up and sees a tall guy with a black suit and black hat, but can't see his face, and a mark of green skin on his hand. He walks into the restroom. Immediately, a doctor comes to the mother and begins talking to her about the father. Rachael removes her hand from her face, sits up again, and looks straight ahead at the 2 restrooms. Rachael turns to her mother and pats her. Rachael says, "I'm going to the restroom." Mother, glancing back at Rachael, says, "Okay, honey." Rachael stands up, fixes her clothes, and looks left and right. She walks toward the restroom. When she arrives, she tries to pull open the door, but it is locked. She thinks it's crazy that the doors are locked, so she starts pulling even harder. Rachael says, "Great." With her hand on the door, she looks over at the guy's restroom. She then acts like she's leaving the door, but then she looks up and sees no one, so she quickly turns back around and goes into the guy's restroom, stepping quickly inside. Rachael is now inside the restroom. It is nice and clean with a white floor, walls, and ceiling. Rachael looks and sees no one. However, out of view behind the wall are the urinals, which aren't visible when first coming in. Rachael walks toward the toilet booths, but as she walks straight ahead, she sees to the left the tall guy with the black suit and hat using the wall strainers. Therefore, she begins to turn back around and head out, but under the door she sees the shadow of someone coming in. Therefore, she turns back around and runs towards the toilet booths. She gets inside and closes the door. In comes the guy. It is Mr. Richardson. He goes to use the urinal one away from the guy in black. Rachel peeks out and sees them. She is filled with wonder. Rachael, talking to herself, says, "What is he doing here?" Mr. Richardson then straightens himself and flushes it. He then heads over to wash his hands, looking to his right at the guy in black. The guy in black is still in the same position, not moving. As Mr. Richardson washes his hands, he looks in the mirror. He then grabs some paper towels, turns off the water, and begins drying his hands. He throws them in the trash and heads out. Rachael looks and sees the door close. She looks over at the guy, and he's in the same position, not moving at all. She sees the patch of green skin on his right hand. She closes the door and locks it. She uses the restroom. She then flushes the toilet. Rachael then pulls up her pants, buttons, and zips them. Rachael then steps up on the toilet to look over. The guy still hasn't moved. Rachael is shocked. Rachael says quietly, "What is this guy doing?" She then gets down, goes and opens the door and peeks out. He's now gone from the urinal. All of a sudden she hears the water running. She looks down and sees the guy's shoes. The water is running because the guy is washing his hands. However, Rachael cannot see him. Rachael decides to wait. After waiting, the water is still running, and he's taking an unbelievably long time. Therefore, Rachael decides to see if the guy is still there, so she steps on top of the toilet. However, she slips and makes a noise. The water stops. Rachael pauses while breathing heavily. The water comes back on. Rachael slowly begins to step onto the toilet to look over. When she looks over, there is no one, but the water is still running. She looks to her right and sees the guy walking over to go to the second booth. She immediately steps down. She looks through the crack in the door. There, in the crack, is the alien peeking through, looking directly at her. Rachael jumps back onto the toilet and then climbs over the wall to the second booth. She rushes out and heads toward the restroom door. She opens it. There is her father, in blue hospital clothes, coming in. They are shocked to see each other. Rachael then looks back to see the alien. It's gone. Her father glances at the men's sign on the door. Father, confused, asks, "What are you doing in here?" Rachael says, What are you doing here? I thought you were..." Rachel's back is towards the restroom. Father interrupts. "Forget about it. Why are you in the guy's restroom?" Rachael glances back. "There's someone in here." "Of course." "No, I mean, someone's after me." He steps inside and looks around. Father says, "There's no one in here. I don't see anybody." Rachael, looking around, says, "He was wearing a black suit." Rachael looks down at the back of her father's hand and sees the green mark. She slowly looks up at him. She's terrified. Suddenly, someone comes in the door. Rachael turns her head to see. It is a guy she's never seen before. Rachael looks back at her father. He's gone. She looks at the guy. He has a scary grin on his face. He stands still, looking straight at her just like the alien on the highway. She slowly creeps past him as he stands there and watches her, not moving at all or changing the expression on his face. She pulls open the door, looking back at him, and runs out. Rachael starts screaming and crying, "Help! Somebody!" Rachael runs through the hospital. As she ran, there appears ahead of her mother, looking concerned. But Rachael keeps running. Everything appears in slow motion. As she watches Rachael run past, her face smiles and transforms into the alien, with the rest of her body remaining the same. Rachael runs with all her might. Then appears in front of her father, also looking with concern. Rachael runs past, and his face smiles and transforms into the alien. Then there is Teresa, and her face changes into the alien as it grins and watches her run by. Then there appeared Johnny in front of her. But she keeps running, and the same thing happens. She reaches the exit door. She opens it, and out came a lot of light. Suddenly, Rachael is now in her second bedroom again. She pauses, in wonder how she got there, and is breathing heavily. Her music is blasting. She looks out the window. It is a normal day. She then walks out of her room. She looks in Johnny's room. Rachael now hears her mother and father arguing downstairs. Johnny's in there, playing like before. The stuffed alien is gone and no longer on the shelf. Rachael continues to walk downstairs. She hears her mother yelling at her father. Mother is screaming, "Ah, damn you! Damn you!" Her father is lying on the kitchen table, and her mother is stabbing him in the back, but the mother's face is not visible, only her hair. Rachael steps backward, holds her mouth, and her eyes become wide at the sight of it. With her back turned towards Rachael, her mother goes over to the sink and begins rinsing off the butcher knife. Still, only her hair is seen, not her face. Her hands are bloody, and the water flushes it down the sink. Rachael, about to say something, decides to try to sneak past her and go out the door. Mother, with her back towards Rachael, asks, "Where are you going?" Rachael pauses. Terrified, Rachael asks, "What did you do, Mother?" Rachael is looking at her dead, stabbed father on the kitchen table. "I killed your father. What does it look like?" She looks at her father again and then starts to run out the door. But her mother speaks with a louder voice. "Where are you going, Rachael? Do you not yet realize that running gets you nowhere? And besides, your father is not dead." Her father gets off the table and stands there looking at Rachael. He still has a knife in him and is covered with blood. He's smiling at Rachael. Rachael is shocked and scared. Her mother drops the knife into the sink and slowly turns around. She has the face of the alien, but everything else, her hair and her body, is unchanged. Alien mother, still with Rachael's mother's voice, says, "Now, do you really think I would kill your father?" Rachael appears a little braver and says, "Yes." Alien mother goes over to her father. She reaches and takes the knife out of the skin and asks, "And why is that?" "Because that's what I saw." Alien mother, laughing and coming towards her, says, "Yes?" Rachael says, "But I don't believe you anymore. You can't harm me. You're only in my imagination." Alien mother chuckles. "And you don't remember your father?" Rachael, getting nervous, says, "Yes, but look, I'm all better now. You can't harm me." Alien mother, slowly walking towards Rachael, says, "Oh, really?" She chuckles. Rachael says, "Because you're not real." Alien mother starts laughing louder. Rachael screams, "You're not real. Go away." Alien mother grins. "Oh no, Rachael. I'm as real gets." Rachael nervously says, "No, you're not. And I'm not going to run anymore." She's now directly in front of Rachael and holding the knife in her hand. Alien mother, looking at and admiring her knife, says, "So, if I'm not real, can I stab you in your leg?" Rachael says nothing. Alien mother starts talking louder. "If this knife is not real..." The alien looks up at Rachael into her eyes. "And if I'm not real, how about I stab you in the leg?" Rachael shows a little more confidence and says, "Go ahead." Looking Rachael directly in the face, The alien stabs her in the leg. Rachael immediately feels pain and tears begin to fall down her eyes. The alien grins, but then starts to look serious. It then takes the knife out and stabs her in the other leg. Rachael cries and screams and falls to her knees. She looks down and sees the knife in her leg. She pulls the knife out, gets up, and begins to run out the door. The alien smiles at her. Rachael is now outside screaming and crying, "Somebody! Please! Somebody!" Suddenly, there is Rachael's friend Teresa in her car waiting for her. Rachael has a flashback of her and her boyfriend on the couch. Rachael is still bleeding on her legs. Teresa looks at her with great wonderment. Rachael jumps into the car, shouts and cries, "Go! Go! Go!" Teresa takes off. Teresa, shocked, asks, "Oh my God! What's going on? Who did this to you?" Rachael, grabbing her head, says, "My mind." Teresa asks, "What's wrong with your mind?" "Everything isn't real. I mean, everything seems to change. Everything I see confuses me." Rachael stops and looks at Teresa seriously and says, "You're not even real. You're the alien. I know." Rachael opens the door and jumps out of the car. Teresa looks surprised and concerned. She starts to run into someone's lawn, but sees a big black dog barking at her. She sees that Teresa is driving along with her, so she slows down, lets her go past, and runs to the other side of the street. Teresa pulls over to the side of the road. Teresa gets out of the car. Rachael runs down the sidewalk. Rachael looks back to see if Teresa is where the car is located. Teresa shouts, "Rachael, please!" Rachael keeps running. Teresa looks confused. Rachael turns left to run through someone's yard. She's now running in between the sides of two houses. She's getting closer to seeing what lies behind each house. When she reaches the back of each house, suddenly a dog pops out and tries to attack her, but it is pulled back by its chain, just missing her. Rachael keeps running. She runs into the woods. After running for about 5 minutes, she hides behind a tree, sits down and cries. She closes her eyes, covers her ears, and puts her head down. She cries and cries. "Please go away. Please go away. Please don't come again. Please go away. Please go away. Please go away." Some time passes. Rachael awakes and is still in the same position. It is nighttime. Looking around, she slowly gets up and begins walking as quietly as possible. All of a sudden, she hears leaves move. She stops and looks around to listen. There is nothing. She starts moving again. All of a sudden, a raccoon runs across from her. She grabs her chest. Rachael continues to walk back towards the road. She finally sees headlights of a car zoom by. Then she sees someone walking along the side of the road ahead of her. It appears to be an old guy with ragged clothes. She lets him continue to walk past her. She watches him as he walks farther down the road. After he had gone so far, she begins to walk out to the road, but then she sees a car coming, so she moves farther back into the woods and lies down to hide. As the car roamed by, and by the car's headlights there appeared that old guy behind her. The car zooms by. Rachael, not knowing who is behind her, gets up and takes a deep breath. She looks to her right, farther down the road, to see if the guy is still walking. She does not see him. She quickly turns around and looks behind her. There, he is looking her directly in the face. Frightened, she starts to run across the street. The old guy watches her run. Rachael runs back the way she came when she came into the woods. She runs through the backyard and onto the sidewalk. She runs and runs. Rachael finally arrives at her house. She looks through the window and sees her mother about to cut a cantaloupe on the counter with that same big butcher knife. Rachael watches. She stabs the cantaloupe and out pours blood. Rachel's mother then turns her head toward Rachael and looks directly at her through the window. Terrified, Rachael takes deep breaths. All of a sudden, her mother throws the knife directly at Rachael. It hits and breaks the window and stabs Rachael directly in the head. Rachael throws her arms back and falls backwards. She now appears to be falling downwards in a tunnel. After falling for some time, suddenly there is Teresa. She is standing outside the car door and asks, "Rachael, you coming?" Rachael quickly awakes. She looks at her friends, each one directly in the face. She looks all around her and notices she is at the theater. She puts her head back against the seat and takes a deep breath. She sits there and starts crying. They all look at each other with concern. Rachael, crying, says, "This is unbelievable. Oh my God." Teresa then goes over to her and grabs her face. "Rachael, it's me, Teresa." "Oh, please don't." Teresa, shaking her, says, "Rachael, it's me, Teresa. Remember? We're supposed to be going to the movies?" Rachael pauses and opens her eyes. "Let's go, before we miss the movie." Rachael looks her in the face, is uncertain, and quits crying. Teresa says, "You must have just had a bad dream or something. Come on, so we don't miss the movie." Rachael steps out of the car. Samantha says, "Actually, Teresa, she's been awake the whole time. She just started crying a few minutes ago, for no reason at all." Samantha and Pam head to the theaters. Teresa and Rachael follow behind. Teresa says, "I've been waiting so long to see this movie." Rachael, exhausted, asks, "What movie are we seeing?" Teresa says, "Topless. You knew that." Rachael turns and looks Teresa directly in the face to see if it's possibly a mask. Teresa asks, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Rachael continues to look at her. Tears come down Rachel's eyes. Teresa asks, "What's wrong, Rachael?" Rachael, crying, says, "You don't understand." The two girls ahead look back and stop walking. They turn around and walk toward them. Pam asks, "Okay, what's wrong with Rachael now?" Rachael looks at all of them. "I don't know if you guys are real." Samantha asks, "We're not real. Of course we're real." Pam says, "Yeah." Rachael asks, "But how am I supposed to believe you? How am I supposed to know?" Samantha says, "Look, if we weren't real, then we wouldn't be here trying to convince you that we were." Rachael looks up at them, takes a deep breath, and bids them to keep walking toward the movies. It is the next day. They are in school, in psychology class. On the board there's a drawing of the human face and brain, with lines pointing to the eyes, and surrounding it, a picture of an environment of trees and stuff. Rachael, Teresa, Samantha, Pam, and the rest of the class watch the teacher. Rachael has her glasses on. As she watches the teacher teach, tears begin to fall down her eyes. Mr. Wretch, the teacher, points to the environment and asks,
"Okay, what is this to him?"
Teresa raises her hand. Teresa says, "It is what he perceives." Mr. Wretch says,
"Okay."
Pointing to the environment, he asks,
"Is this real to him?"
Teresa says, "Yes, it appears to be to him."
"And why does it appear to be real to him?"
Teresa says, "Because by his experience with it throughout time, it starts to paint a mark of it in his mind." Mr. Wretch says,
"That's right, but how does it get in his mind?"
Teresa stops to think. Andrew, a kid with glasses, speaks up. Andrew, not knowing for sure, says,
"Because it gets planted in his memory?"
Teacher says,
Okay, good.
Rachael speaks up and asks, "But what is real?" Mr. Wretch asks,
What do you believe is real, Rachael?
Rachael says, "Nothing." Mr. Wretch asks,
Then nothing's real?
Someone else raises their hand. Mr. Wretch calls on him, but Rachel's thinking and no longer paying attention. The bell rings. Rachael suddenly awakes and grabs her book bag. Teresa waves bye to Samantha and Pam as they walk out the classroom. Teresa goes to talk to Rachael. Teresa, smiling, says, "I love this class. So are you going home today? Your parents might have called the police, and they might be looking for you." Rachael says, "If they did, they would have come here." Teresa looks at Rachael. "If I go home, will you come with me?" "Sure, let's go." She grabs Rachel's hand. "And will you stay over? I don't want to be there by myself." "I'll have to call my parents, but I don't think it would be a problem." "Thank you." Teresa and Rachael are walking towards the house. It is still the same house of the second room Rachael was in. The lights are out. Rachael looks inside through the glass. She sees no one. Rachael grabs the knob to turn it. It is locked. Teresa asks, "Isn't anyone here?" Rachael says, "There should be. My mom should be off work." Rachael looks over at the window. She goes to see if she could slide it open. It opens. They climb inside. There's no one in the house. Rachael quietly goes to check every room downstairs. There is no one. She goes to the kitchen drawer and grabs a butcher knife. Teresa looks at her like she's crazy and is shocked. Rachael says, "Oh, I'm not going to hurt anybody." They walk up the stairs. Rachael checks every room. No one is inside. They both go to Rachel's room. There's a picture frame with Rachel's boyfriend's picture in it on her nightstand. They drop their book bags and both sit on her bed. Rachael lies back on her bed with the knife in her hand. "Thanks a lot for coming, Teresa." "Oh, no problem. I just want to make sure you're okay." Teresa looks over at the picture on the nightstand and takes it. Teresa asks, "Who's he?" Rachael looks at it and then pauses to think. She looks shocked. Tears start coming down her eyes. Rachael says, "That's it." Rachael ponders. Teresa looks at her confused. Teresa asks, "What?" After a few seconds, Rachael slowly speaks. Rachael says, "I'm dreaming." "You're what?" Rachael starts laughing with tears. "This is a dream. I'm asleep right now." Teresa looks confused. "How are you asleep when I'm here staring you in the face?" "We never finished the movie." "Who? What movie?" "Me and Michael. Remember you asked me what happened that night?" "Yes, but you didn't give much details." "I don't ever remember leaving his house. I don't even remember watching the movie. We have to still be asleep on his couch right now." "So are you telling me that I'm a dream person in your dream? And I'm not real?" Rachael says, "Yes." Rachael starts smiling. But as Rachael ponders more, Rachael starts to look more serious. She puts her hand over her eyes and closes them and says, "I need to wake up." She opens her eyes again. Teresa is gone. She looks around. "Teresa?" She looks under the bed and sees no one. She goes over and looks in the closet and finds no one. "Teresa!" Rachael hears a car door close. She looks out the window and sees her mother and little brother getting out of the car. Her little brother is holding the stuffed alien in his hand. Rachael hears the door unlocking. She runs over and grabs the knife and goes to peek out into the hallway from the crack of her door. Johnny's now running up the stairs. Rachel's mother is behind him. Mother says, "Quit running, Johnny. No running in the house." Johnny runs into his room. Rachel's mother goes into her room. Rachel slowly walks over to her mother's room with the knife in her hand. She looks inside and sees her mother removing her earrings. Her mother does not see her. Rachel stands outside the door with the knife behind her back. "Mom?" Her mother jumps, turns around, holds her chest, and starts breathing heavily. Her mother's face looks like she's been crying. "Jeez, you scared me." Rachel asks, "What's wrong?" Her mother puts her head down and starts crying, then goes to sit on her bed. Mother, covering her eyes, says, "I can't believe this." Rachel goes over to her. "What?" Mother says, "I just don't know what's real anymore." Rachel carefully watches her. Mother continues to say, "It's the things that I see. They seem real." She looks up and says, "But how do I know? How can I tell?" Rachel starts to cry, but as her mother looks at her, she slowly starts to smile and have a grin on her face. Rachel starts to become afraid and breathe heavily. Getting angry and fearful, Rachel runs over to stab her. Suddenly, her mother looks shocked. Rachel stabs her directly in the forehead. She fearfully backs away and examines what she has done. Her brother peeks around the corner. He's shocked at what he sees. Therefore, he runs downstairs and calls the police. Rachel is still shocked at what she's done. Rachel sees a broom laying against the wall. Therefore, she goes, grabs it, and with the tip of the handle jags her mother's face with it to see if she's fully dead. Downstairs, Johnny is calling the police. Johnny says, "Hello? My sister stabbed my mom." Rachel's thinking what she should do with the body. She quickly walks out of the room and slightly closes it behind her. She runs over to Johnny's room and peeks inside. She glances around. Johnny is not there. Rachel runs to every room upstairs and sees no one. Rachel starts to run downstairs. Rachel shouts, "Johnny!" Johnny is still on the phone. Rachel comes downstairs. He hangs up the phone and runs out the door. Rachel shouts, "Johnny, wait!" She runs over and opens the basement door. It's completely dark. She goes over to the living room. It is empty. She looks out the window and sees Johnny hiding behind the side of the house, waiting for the cops to come. Rachel runs upstairs to her mother's room. She grabs the knife out of her head. Blood gushes out. Rachel runs to the bathroom, takes some tissue, wipes the knife, and flushes the tissue down the toilet. In her mother's room, her mother lies there dead. She grabs her mother's ankles and begins to drag her out the room, but then she stops. She has a flashback of when she was on her bed with Teresa and telling her that it is only a dream. So Rachel drops her mother's ankles and begins to laugh carefully. The police arrive. Rachel, smiling, says, "That's right, I'm dreaming." So Rachel goes out of the room with the knife. The cops run upstairs and see her in the hallway with the knife. The police shout, "Freeze! Drop your weapon and put your hands behind your back." Rachel, laughing, says to them, "This isn't real. It's just a dream. Can't you tell?" Rachel throws the knife at the police. The officer dodges it. Rachel runs through her brother's room and jumps out the window. She lands on her feet and runs. Rachel yells, "This is just a dream!" The cops come out the house running after her. But as Rachel runs across the street, honk! A car hits her and she rolls up the car. Suddenly, everything in Rachel's environment is pitch black. Rachel, not seeing anything, asks, "Hello? Somebody?" After a couple of seconds, the light is turned on. It is a female doctor. Rachel looks at herself and then looks up at the doctor. Doctor asks, "Can I help you with something?" Rachel, frightened and confused, asks, "What am I doing here?" Doctor says, "You were hit by a car, Rachel." Rachel, getting scared and angry, says, "No, it was just a dream. It wasn't real." "No, it was real, Rachel. I'm going to give you your medicine so you can calm down." She gets the medicine ready. After she said that, Rachel is even more confused and startled and tries to get up out of the bed, but she's strapped to it. She tries even harder. "Can you take these things off?" "Can't. You're convicted of murder, and I can't let you loose." Rachel stops to think. She sits back and takes a deep breath. Rachel looks out the window, and from the corner of her eye she sees the alien looking evilly at her. Rachel turns her head toward the doctor. Rachel says with a loud voice, "Doctor, look!" "Yes?" Rachel looks back at the window. It's gone. Rachel says, "Out the window, look!" The doctor looks. "I don't see anything. What?" "It's the thing that's after me." Doctor says, "Well, this place is locked up so no one can get in, so there's nothing to worry about, and I'm going to leave this light on for you so you can see a little." She leaves the restroom light on and puts the needle in her arm. "This should help you get a good night's sleep. I'll see you tomorrow." Rachel says, "No, don't go. Please don't go." The doctor leaves and waves by. Rachel looks over at the window and starts breathing heavily. There's nothing. Rachel stares at it. Rachel turns her head and looks over in the hallway. The light from the hallway beats into the room. Rachel sees a shadow moving in the hallway. She tries to break loose, but she can't. She watches the hallway. The shadow gets bigger. As she watches the shadow, the window is now open. Wind is blowing inside. In slithers the alien like a snake. Watching the shadow, Rachel realizes it was the security guard. Rachel quickly turns her head to the window. She sees that it is open. She yells to the guard, "Guard!" Rachel examines the straps and tries to break loose. "Guard!" All is quiet in the room except Rachel's breath. Rachel looks back at the window. "Guard! Help! Somebody's come into the room! Doctor! Help!" Rachel continues screaming. But as she screams, in the chair in the dark corner of the room, in the form of smoke, there appears a person. The guy is smoking, and you can barely see his face. The guy asks, "Why are you yelling, young lady?" Rachel stops and looks over at the corner. The guy asks, "What are you afraid of? You've been scared for God knows how long. Are you still not here?" Rachel asks, Who are you?" "I am nothing at all, just a figment of your imagination." He empties the ashes into the ashtray and continues smoking. "You're talking to yourself." Rachel stops to think. "What do you mean?" "Simply what I state. I'm a figment of your imagination. You're the one controlling me. I'm not myself, but I'm you." Rachel stops and says, "Okay, if I'm controlling you, why aren't you doing what I've just imagined you to do?" The guy says, "Because even you are your imagination. You're just like me. Everything right now is being controlled by the mind." Rachel asks, "But how do you know this?" "It's called a lucid dream." "A lucid?" Rachel ponders. "How is this even possible?" "How's what possible?" "Ma being in the stream and knowing it. Doesn't that mean it's real?" The guy says, "As you've noticed, but sometimes forget this is only a dream. Soon it'll all be over. Or will it?" Rachel asks, "When will I awake?"
The person who is dreaming is already awake. He continues to puff his cigarette. The guy says, "You are awake." Rachel looks scared and asks, "So I'm in my own dream?" "You are the dream." "When will I get out?" "You are already out." Rachel starts tearing. Rachel cries out, "I can't stay here forever." The guy says, "But you are here forever." "Why?" "Because this is what you are." "If I'm not real, and you're not real, then how can I believe you?" "It's not your job to believe me. It's your job to listen. Whether you believe or not does not change the dream. It has already happened." "So, since I'm stuck in this dream forever, I can do whatever I want, right?" "Yes, but are you sure you're dreaming?" "I have to be dreaming, because I remember when I went to sleep." "Could that also be part of a dream?" Rachel looks at the guy. "You can't judge what is real by looking at what you think is real, because when you're awake, the only thing you can experience is what you think is your reality, and of your memory. You cannot see yourself, Rachel. Yet, when you are asleep, what you see is what you remember. You have to look within yourself. To look around to see if it is indeed a dream is truly impossible." Rachel pauses and looks at him confused. "How do I look within myself when I'm not even real?" "No, but you are real." "I thought you said that I'm just a part of my dream." "But you are the only thing that's real in your life." "Okay, then prove to me that I'm dreaming." "Okay, go look in the mirror." Rachel sees that the straps are gone. "If you see a reflection, then you're in reality. But if you don't, then you're in a dream." Rachel gets out of bed and goes to see the reflection in the mirror. But as she walks over, she sees a shadow in the hallway. However, she still heads toward the mirror. She looks, and to her surprise, she has a reflection. Rachel is shocked. Looking at herself in the mirror, she touches her face. She touches the mirror. All of a sudden, the sun comes up. Light shines in through the window. It is now daytime. Rachel turns her head to see the light, and she realizes it is daytime. She runs over to the door and peeks out the hallway. She sees no one. Rachel then runs back over to the window and looks out. She sees a normal city with people walking outside. Rachel slides open the window. She gets it open. She opens the screen and looks down. Knowing that it is a long way down, Rachel takes the covers and sheets on her bed and ties them together to make a rope. Rachel ties part of it to the bed. As she checks to see if it's tightened enough, Rachel glances at the door to see if anyone is coming. When she sees the shadow, Rachel grabs the rope and climbs out the window. Rachel climbs down. A mother and child walking along the sidewalk watch her climb down. Inside the hospital, the cook comes in with Rachel's food. She looks up and sees the rope hanging out the window. She looks to her right, into the restroom. The cook runs over to the window. She looks down. Rachel is gone. The cook runs and tells the guard. Rachel is now in the city, running down the sidewalk. Out of the hospital comes the security guard, running. He looks up at the window and rope and asks the mother and child, "Which way?" They point in Rachel's direction. Rachel runs into a store. She hides behind the arcade games. Rachel looks through the window and sees the security guard. He's looking around for Rachel. He does not see her. Therefore, he turns back around and heads back toward the hospital. Everybody's looking at Rachel. She looks back at them. Rachel smiles at them and heads out the store. Just ahead, she sees a clothing store. She runs over to it. Inside, there is only a few people, so Rachel runs over to the clothes section. She picks out some clothes and shoes and quickly puts them on. Tearing off the tags, she walks out of the store. The police drive by. Rachel acts like she doesn't see them and looks the other way. After the car had passed, Rachel walks down the sidewalk, looking around. As Rachel walks and looks around, walking toward her is Mr. Richardson. He sees her, but she doesn't see him. Finally, Rachel turns her head, and in front of her sees him. Mr. Richardson says with great surprise, "My golly, McMolly, Rachel. What are you doing around here?" Rachel, looking at the police drive away, "Oh, I'm just visiting." "Oh, really?" "What are you doing here?" "I've come to visit my daughter. She lives down that way and around the corner." He points down the street. "Hey, where's your mother?" "Oh, no, I came with some friends." "Okay, so where are you staying?" Rachel, pointing down the street, says, "Down that way. My friend's aunt is who we're staying with." "That's great. Well, they're waiting on me. I guess I'll see you around." She sees the cops coming back the other way. "Well, I can hang with you for a while if you don't mind." Mr. Richardson says confidently, "Sure." They start walking. "Maybe you can meet my daughter." "How old is she?" "She's 21, and blossoming like a full-blown flower." They continue walking and talking. A short time later it is nighttime, and they are at Mr. Richardson's daughter's house. Rachel, Mr. Richardson, and his daughter are in the dining room eating at the table. The clock on the wall reads 9:25 p.m. Mr. Richardson says, "This is quite some story, Rachel." Daughter says, "Yeah, it seems almost unbelievable." Rachel looks at them both. Mr. Richardson says, "Maybe you just need to rest for a little bit." "Oh no, definitely no rest. I've had enough of that already." "So you can get rested and relieve all that stress." "The last thing I need to do is go to sleep." Rachel gets up from the table to pour herself something to drink. Mr. Richardson and the daughter look at each other like they don't believe her. Rachel, pouring her drink, says, "Remember when you picked me up on West College Street?" Mr. Richardson says, I don't recall." "About 3 days ago." "Last time I saw you was at the hospital. I saw you and your mother walking inside." "About 3 days ago, you pulled over on the side of the street, and you saw me standing on the sidewalk? You picked me up and gave me a ride home. And I told you all that had happened." "I don't recall. Now that might have been a dream." "But, okay. Remember when I was walking to school about, I think it was 5 days ago, and you drove by?" Mr. Richardson starts to think as if he doesn't remember that either. After a while, Mr. Richardson recalls and says with enthusiasm, "Okay, that's right. I told you to tell your mother I said hello. Yes, I remember that." Rachel starts smiling. "So how's she doing now?" Rachel remembers the knife. Rachel says, "I hope she's all right." "What do you mean by that?" Rachel pauses, then says, "You know what? I haven't seen my older brother lately, nor my father. That seems weird." Mr. Richardson asks, "When was the last time you've seen them?" Rachel pauses, then asks, "Can I use your restroom?" Mr. Richardson points down the hallway. Rachel gets up and heads down the hallway. She arrives at the restroom. She slowly walks in, looking to see if her reflection is in the mirror. Rachel does not see her reflection. She waves her hand in front of it, but there is nothing. Rachel runs out of the restroom into the dining room. The chairs are empty. The table is clear. Rachel runs over to the window. She sees the trees and a dirt road leading out into the woods. She also sees dead people walking, so she runs to the front and looks out the screen door. Frightened, she runs over to the kitchen to get a knife. However, just before she grabs it, she sees an axe hanging on the wall. Therefore, she takes that instead. After grabbing the axe, she runs back over to the front door. She still sees the dead people walking. As they walk, as if they were dead, one of them, a dead lady, turns their head toward Rachael. It then slowly begins walking toward her, toward the door. Rachael pretends to run, but actually stands to the side of the door, waiting for her to come in. The lady reaches the door. She is looking inside the screen door. The dead lady speaks. The dead lady says, "Rachael." The dead lady goes to grab the handle and open it. Rachael waits for her to come in. The dead lady opens it and peeks inside. She peeks around the corner and looks directly at Rachael with the axe. "Rachael." Rachael takes the axe and chops her head off. Rachael goes back in front of the door and sees her head on the floor and her body lying in the doorway. Rachael looks outside. All of a sudden, along with the dead people, Rachael sees thousands of black wasp-like creatures, but with the heads of human-like bats. As Rachael watches them, they turn their head and look at her. They look intelligent. They start flying toward her. Rachael looks down at the body, kicks it out, and quickly closes the screen door. She then tries to close the main door, but for some reason she could not get it to move. She goes over and examines it. It appears normal. Rachael glances around the house. She sees that a window is open without a screen. The wasps beat against the screen door, but they immediately stop and see the open window on the other side of the house, which Rachael saw. At the same time, Rachael runs over to close the window, and the wasps fly around the house to get there before her. When she reached it, the wasps had already arrived, so she quickly slams it shut and smashes a wasp that almost made it in. Its head sticks out the crack. Rachael watches the wasp cry in a deep voice. Rachael takes the axe and smashes in its head. Rachael goes over to the phone and calls the police. They answer. Rachael says, "You gotta help me. These flying-like creatures are trying to get into my house. I don't know. There are thousands of them, and there are people trying to kill me." Phone person asks, "Okay, where are you?" Rachael looks outside and says, "I don't know." Phone person says, "Okay, you stay put. We'll track you and be there." Rachael then looks up at the window and screen door, and suddenly everything seems calm. She sees no more dead people or wasps. Rachael goes and sits on the couch for a while. Nothing happens. Rachael looks at her watch. It shows 9:25. Rachael sits even longer. Nothing happens, and no one comes. She gets up and goes over to look outside the door. As she looks out, everything appears to be quiet and normal. Rachael glances at her watch. She sees that it still reads 9:25. Rachael then looks back at it and realizes it is the same time as before. So Rachael goes over to the kitchen and looks at the clock on the wall. It still reads 9:25. Rachael runs into Mr. Richardson's daughter's room and looks at the digital clock. It reads 9:26. Also outside the window, it no longer appears to be night, but rather late evening. Rachael seems a little relieved. On her dresser, Rachael sees a picture. It is a picture of her when she was a little girl. Rachael goes over to grab the picture. As she studies it, knock, knock, knock. Rachael jumps. She slowly walks out the room after hearing the knock at the door. She looks through the window and sees no one is on the porch. Rachael grabs the axe as she creeps to the front door. When she arrives at the door, Rachael peeks out the screen, looking both ways. Rachael sees no one at all. Rachael slowly opens the screen door. She walks onto the porch. Rachel goes and walks over to the left. She walks all the way down and looks down the side of the house. A rabbit runs into the woods. Rachel turns around, and all of a sudden, there is a guy about the age of 26 staring her directly in the face. Rachel jumps and tries to jump over the railing, but before she can make it over, the guy grabs her. Rachel, screaming, "Ah! Get off of me!" Rachel kicks the railing and pushes the guy backwards. They fall to the ground. Rachel gets up and starts running down the dirt road. Angrily, the guy watches her run. He then walks inside the house as if he lived there. As Rachel runs down the road, she looks back and sees that the guy is not following her. Rachel starts to become aware of her environment. Sometime later, she is walking down a road. More time passes, and it is nighttime, and she is still walking down the road. Inside a car and traveling on the same road, but in an opposite direction, is Rachael, another Rachel, her younger brother, her father, and her mother. As they drive past, the Rachel in the car looks out the window. She is shocked to see herself. Rachael, the one walking down the road, looks at herself directly in the eyes. She continues to stare as she zooms away. As they zoomed away, the Rachael in the car continues to look back at her, forming a connection, and her eyes begin to tear in wonderment. All of a sudden, as she walked along the road, Rachael starts having flashbacks. She thinks of the time when she was in her room packing her bags in the beginning. Then she remembers that she had hit her head on the bed when she went to grab the alien. But as she's thinking, a car, the same car as the one that she was driving before on the highway when running from the alien, pulls over on the side of the road. Rachael watches it pull right beside her. She does not recognize it as the same car from before. It is Jason, a guy in his late 20s. Jason asks, "Hey, you want to ride?" Rachael looks at him. She stops to think. She looks around. Rachael decides to get in. The same upbeat party music is playing again through the speakers of his car. A pocket knife lies on the ashtray. Jason asks, "So what are you doing walking this late at night?" Rachael looks at him as if she had a bad day. Jason asks, "What's the reason?" Rachael finally speaks and says, "Because I'm homeless." Jason looks at her with concern and skepticism. "Come again?" Rachael says with frustration, "Because I'm homeless." "You can't be homeless. What happened to your parents?" Rachael does not respond. Jason says, "You mean?" Rachael interrupts. "They were shot and killed by an alien." The guy laughs. Rachael sees the pocket knife on the ashtray. "Okay. Anything else you'd like to tell me? That you're on another planet or something?" Jason glances over at her and sees that she is troubled, about to go crazy. "Really? Where are you from? Where do you live?" "Why did you pick me up?" "Come again?" "Why did you pick me up?" Jason, grinning, says, "Because I care, you know. You were in the middle of nowhere, for God's sake. And besides, you, a girl? You shouldn't be walking this late at night." Rachael starts to cry a little. Rachael says, "That isn't the reason." Jason then looks at her and sees that she's really troubled. He speaks dishonestly. "Look, ma'am, I thought I'd be nice and give you a ride, but if you don't want it, I can pull over right now. I mean no harm, really." Rachael asks, "Do you know me?" "Of course I don't know you." "Then why'd you pick me up?" Jason starts laughing. "Come on, relax. Like I said, it's too dark for you to be walking out here alone." "What if I were to kill you and take your car?" Jason, laughing, says, "Trust me. Lady, you see these muscles? He makes a muscle with his right arm. "You'll have to try pretty hard to take me down." Rachael asks, "So who are you?" Rachael sneaks to grab the knife. "My name is Jason." "And where are you heading towards?" "I'm heading toward my grandmother's. Actually, it's her birthday, and I'm a little late." "Where does she live?" "About 30 miles from here." He looks at her and says, "And so, where do you live?" "Me? I live in a dream." Rachael stares out the window, and at the same time is preparing to stab him with the knife. Jason, smiling, asks, "Come again?" Rachael shouts, "I live in a fucking dream! I'm dreaming right now. You, me, this dream." Jason asks, "Whose dream? What dream?" She says, "My dream." Jason starts laughing. Rachael starts to open the pocket knife. Rachael sheds tears and says, "You can't scare me anymore." The driver continues laughing and says, "Lady, you need to relax. I'm just a guy driving to his grandmother's house to help you." Rachael says, "And that's why you think I'm joking. And that's why you stopped to pick me up." The driver continues laughing. Rachael, crying some more, says, "If you're in a dream, everything appears to be real." Jason continues laughing. She continues to say, "But you're not real. You're that fucking creature trying to trick me." Rachael pulls up the knife. The driver stops laughing and glances at her. He quickly puts his hands up to block himself from being stabbed with the knife. Jason asks, Hey, what are you doing?" "Any normal person would have tried to stop me by now. All you did is laugh." "Hey, okay, I'll stop the car." He begins to pull over to the side of the road. Rachael screams at him, "You fucking liar!" He starts to get scared. "Here, ma'am, I'm letting you out right here. Calm down, okay?" Rachael cries out, "You're the one who's been playing with my mind. You're the one who's trying to scare me. You're the one who is making my life a living hell." Jason nervously asks, "What are you talking about?" Rachael quickly goes over to stab him. She shouts, "You fucking liar! Stay out of my life! Stay the fuck away from me!" He tries to protect himself from her, but she seems to be too strong. Rachael stabs him repeatedly. As she stabs him, he quits pretending like he's hurt and looks at her angrily. Jason says, "You've made a big mistake." Rachael kicks him out of the car. She gets in the driver's seat and takes off. He then gets up. Suddenly, all the blood and wounds on his body begin to heal. His eyes transform black like the alien. Inside the car, Rachael is driving carefully down the road. But as Rachael drives, she looks at the meter and remembers it as before on the highway. But as she looks at the meter, to her surprise, there stood Jason down the road directly in front of the car. He is hit. Rachael keeps driving for a while, but suddenly a deer comes out and she slams on her brakes. The deer stares her directly in the face and does not move. Rachael presses the horn. "Honk, honk." Rachael shouts, "Move!" But the deer does not move. A not too far distance behind the car, Jason is running toward her. "Honk, honk." Rachael gasses it and then brakes a couple times to try to scare the deer, but it does not move. So Rachael decides to back up and drive past it on the other side of the road. But as she turned left, the deer moved in front of her again. Jason is now closer. Rachael decides to slowly drive into the deer, not hurting it, rather pushing it. Jason is now about 20 feet behind Rachael's car. As Rachael pushes the deer, just before she tipped it over, the deer turns its head toward her, roars like a lion, and then runs off. Rachel takes a deep breath. All of a sudden, his arm reaches through the car and grabs Rachel by the neck. Rachel presses on the gas and zooms away. Jason grins as he watches the car drive away. It is now morning. Rachel arrives at a plaza, parks, and gets out of the car. She looks at herself in the mirror to see if she is still awake. Her reflection is in the mirror. Looking around, she walks up to a store which resembles Kmart. Rachel walks in. Everything seems to be normal. An employee walks by and Rachel talks to her. Rachel says, "Excuse me, where is your restroom?" Employee, pointing, says, "Straight down that way, ma'am." "Thank you." When Rachel starts to walk down the aisle, she accidentally hits her leg on an employee cart. It starts bleeding. Rachel says, "Shit!" Rachel walks faster down the aisle. She looks to her left and sees the signs for the restrooms. However, when she looked to her left, from the corner of her eyes, was a tall guy with a black suit and hat, like before, standing still looking in her direction, but Rachel did not see him. Rachel walks over to the restroom. The guy watches her. Rachel walks into the restroom. The guy is gone. Inside the restroom, there are no windows. Rachel grabs some tissue, wets it, and wipes the blood on her leg. She stands in front of the mirror, aiding her wound. But as she wiped her leg, Rachel did not notice that there was no reflection of her in the mirror. At this time, Rachel does not notice. Rachel sees that it's starting to clear up, so she throws the tissue into the trash. Again, Rachel looks down at her cut. It's no longer bleeding. Finally, Rachel decides to look up at the mirror in front of her. She sees no reflection at all. Rachel's shocked. The bathroom door busts open. Cops, pointing their guns at Rachel, shout, "Freeze!" Rachel looks at them, frightened. Rachel then looks back and, all of a sudden, sees a window. The cops shout, "Put your hands up!" All of a sudden, Rachel turns around and starts running toward the window. The police fire. Bullets gush through her back as the upper part of her body falls down and lies outside the window. Rachel is in her room. It is a different room than all her previous rooms. It is dark. Rachel is breathing. She starts to move around, but everything is dark. Very dim light shines through the window. As she moves around, the sound of a cup falls over. Rachel says, "Shit!" Rachel reaches for the lamp and hits the switch. The light comes on. Rachel hears someone coming upstairs. "Rachel! Rachel!" It is the sound of her mother's voice. Rachel quickly shuts back off the light. Light shines through the crack of the bottom of the door from the hallway. The door bursts open. Someone with the hair of her mother steps in, observes around the room, but steps no further inside. With the face of the alien and the body and hair of Rachel's mother, he looks around the room. Since he sees no one, he turns around, heads out, and walks down the hallway. Rachel, in the dark room, looks into the hallway from under her bed. She starts to crawl out. But as she starts to crawl out, Rachel does not see the alien walking back up the hallway towards Rachel's room. He comes in and turns on the light. Rachel stops crawling. Rachel, still under the bed, looks up and sees her mother, with the alien's face, walk past with a butcher knife in his hand. He walks past the bed over toward the window. There, outside in the night sky, are 2 moons. He looks out. Rachel, being under the bed, peeks out and looks him directly in the face. All of a sudden, the alien sees the reflection of her in the window. They make eye contact directly. The alien then starts hovering over the ground. Rachel does not know if he saw her or not, but she's nervous. Suddenly, Alien says, "Hi, Rachel." Rachel's eyes widen. She quickly tries to get out from under the bed on the other side, but the alien has already come over, ready to stab her. Rachael sees and quickly pulls herself back under the bed, but as she pulls her hands under the bed, the alien went to stab it and just missed. Alien says, "Come the fuck out, Rachael." Rachael is breathing heavily. She does not move. She waits there. As she waits, seconds go by. All is quiet. She has only the view from under the bed. Rachael looks in all directions. She sees no feet. She lies there, waiting to hear a sound of the alien. There is silence. Rachael sees a ball under the bed, so she pushes the ball over towards the closet. It hits it. She waits and listens. There is nothing. So Rachael slowly begins to come out from up under the bed. With her face first, she peeks out. All is quiet. Rachael comes out even more. All is quiet. There is no sign of the alien. She finally fully gets out. She looks around the room. Nothing. Rachael looks for a weapon. She sees her pen on the nightstand, so she takes it. Looking around and slowly walking, Rachael peeks out into the hallway. No alien. Rachael walks past her parents' and older and little brother's room. They were all empty. She walks down the stairs and turns on the kitchen light. She sees no alien. So Rachael walks towards the door leading outside. Rachael slowly opens the door. The street lights are lighting the sidewalks. Rachael looks behind her and sees no alien, so she turns out the kitchen light and walks outside. Rachael sees kids around her age playing in a yard and sprinklers ahead of her, and about 2 boys and 2 girls in the other yard. Rachael walks over to them. Rachael, whispering, says, "Hey, guys." They do not respond, but continue playing in the sprinklers. As Rachael walked in the street toward the yard, a car with tinted windows drives past her and pulls into her driveway. It parks and shuts off its lights. Rachael turns around and with curiosity begins walking toward the car. When she arrives, she stands there waiting for a response. There isn't one, so she slowly goes to open the car door. She peeks inside. It is empty. Rachael takes another look at her environment and neighborhood, but sees no one but the kids playing. Rachael sees a green lighted material mixed with the car on top of the car. The green is about the complexion of the alien. She slowly goes toward it. She puts her fingers out, about to touch it, but she stops and reaches into her pocket. Rachael grabs the pen and slowly uses it to touch the material. The pen goes straight through. Rachael moves the pen in and out of the hole. But as Rachael did it, she stopped. Rachael looks angry. Rachael jams the pen into the material. She backs away from the car. She puts her hands over her head. Rachael shouts, "Quit fucking with my mind!" The teenagers stop playing and look at Rachael. One of the teenagers, mocking Rachael, says, "Quit fucking with my mind!" The other kids laugh. Rachael, breathing heavily, stops and looks at them. She stares at them as they laugh. The kid says again to his friends, "Hey, watch this!" He picks a rock from the ground and throws it at Rachael. It zooms and hits Rachael in the face. Rachael is about to cry. She puts her finger up to feel where she got hit. There is blood. While she's looking at the blood, another rock hits her in the face. The teenager says with enthusiasm, as if throwing a baseball strike, "Oh!" As Rachael starts to get angry, that same car with tinted windows pulls up. The one parked in Rachael's driveway is gone. The window comes down, and out comes a black dog running towards Rachael as the kids continue throwing rocks at her. Suddenly, Rachael is now back at her boyfriend's house. They are on the couch like before, but Rachel's red purse is no longer on the end of the couch. She awakes and looks straight ahead. The clock reads 11:49 p.m. Rachael is relieved and she takes a deep breath. She looks over at her boyfriend and he's asleep. Rachael remembers all of her dream and is even more relieved. She awakes her boyfriend. He awakes and looks over at the television and then looks at Rachael. He looks at his watch and then looks back at Rachael. Michael says, "You better be getting home." Rachael, smiling, says, "You would not believe the dream I just had." Rachael grabs her head. Rachael, exhaling, says, "Oh." Rachael thinks for a minute. Her boyfriend looks like he fell back to sleep. Rachael stands up, and there is her purse on the floor near the bottom of the couch. Rachael grabs her purse and turns off the television. She then walks out of the door, silently closing the door behind her. A short time later, Rachael, with her purse, is walking down the sidewalk up to her house. A car with tinted windows drives past. Rachael continues to walk and watches it drive away. Continuing to walk, and right near her house, Rachael sees a light come on in her parents' room. It's her mother walking around doing something. Rachael grabs the key out of her purse and unlocks the door. She goes in through the kitchen. Rachael then walks upstairs. Rachael walks down the hallway toward her room. She sneaks past her parents' room. Rachael goes into her room, the same room that looked like hers from the beginning. She turns on the light. Everything appears to be normal. Rachael kicks her shoes off, gets undressed, and jumps onto her bed. She turns out the light. It is the next morning. Her mother, father, and brother are in the kitchen. Her mother is cooking breakfast. Her father is reading paper like before, and her brother is drinking and watching the TV. In Rachael's room, she is still lying in her bed, asleep from returning last night. The sun shines through the window. She awakes and slowly gets out of bed. She sits on the side of her bed, rubbing her eyes. Rachael then quickly looks up and around. She looks at the time, 10:45 a.m. Rachael quickly gets up and starts putting on clothes. She quickly goes downstairs. Mother says, "Well, good morning, Rachael." Rachael asks, "Why didn't you awake me?" "Why?" "I have school today." Father says, "Today is Saturday." Mother says, "Yes." Rachael walks over to the calendar on the wall. She observes it. Rachael asks, "What's today's date?" Mother says, "The 25th. The calendar shows Saturday on the 25th. Rachael talks to herself. "I thought there was school today." Mother asks, "Hey, Rachael, you think you can go to the store for me?" "Sure, what do we need?" Mother says, "Just milk and orange juice." Father says, "We'll probably need some more bread, too." Mother nods at Rachael. Rachael says, "Okay, I'm going to jump in the shower first." Rachael is now in the bathroom taking a shower. She turns off the shower and gets out, grabbing her towel and drying off. Rachael then heads to her room and gets dressed. She looks out the window and sees nothing but the normal neighborhood. Minutes later, Rachael is in the car, backing out of the driveway, getting ready to go to the store. The digital clock reads 9:45 a.m. As she backs out into the street, a car zooms past. Rachael is shocked. Rachael continues to back down the driveway into the street. But as she backs out, someone almost smashes into the back of her car. It hits it slightly. Rachael parks and quickly gets out of the car to see where the person hit it. There is no damage. The driver gets out of the car. It is the same guy that picked her up when she was walking at night. When Rachael looks up at him, she is shocked. Tears start coming down her eyes. Jason sincerely says, "I am so sorry. I didn't see the car." Rachael says, "I know you. You were in my dream." Jason smiles, thinking nothing of what Rachael just said. Rachael says, "This is so weird. You had that same car and everything." Rachael's mother starts running out of the house, so also the rest of her family. Mother asks, "What happened? I heard a crash." Rachael says, It's nothing." Johnny asks, "What happened, Mommy?" Mother says, "Oh, nothing, honey. Let's go back up to the house." They head back up to the house. Rachel asks, "So, are you from around here?" Jason says, "No, actually, I've come here to visit my brother." Looking around, Jason says, "He lives on this block. You might know him." "What's his name?" "Michael Trace. Do you know him?" Rachel, shocked, says, "He's my boyfriend. He lives down—" But as she pointed down the street, she realized that the house was gone, replaced with townhouses. Rachel looks the other way. Still no sign of the house. Rachel says, "There was a house over there, and he lived there." Jason says, "No, he said he lived in house number 308. I think it's right next to yours. What's yours?" Rachel says, 306. Jason says, "Yes." Jason heads back to get into his car and says, "Well, I'm going up. It's been years since we've seen each other." Rachel stands there in deep thought. Later that night, Rachel, her older and little brother, her mother and her father are at the table eating dinner. Father says, "That's called a lucid dream." Johnny asks, "What?" Father says, "When you have a dream and know that you're dreaming." Mother asks, "What are those one dreams when you dream the future?" "Well, every dream you dream is the future, as well as the past and the present." Mother asks, "How you figure that?" "Because all dreams are memories of what you've experienced. It may not seem to be exactly the way we remember it when we are awake, but the same thing is actually happening, the same concept." Rachel asks, "How can you tell when you're dreaming or not?" Father says, "You can't when you're dreaming, although you may appear to know. However, you can tell when you're awake. So therefore, when you can tell, that means you're awake." Rachel says, "I can't tell right now. It seems like I'm trapped inside a dream where anything can happen." Father asks, "Do you remember waking up?" Rachel says, "Yes, I woke up at my boyfriend's house after that crazy dream." "And you think you're dreaming right now?" "Yes, because all I remember is being in his apartment, and before that, everything's blank, and this doesn't feel as real." Father says, "Then you're dreaming right now, without a doubt." Her father's eyes get wide. Mother says, "Don't say that." The father smiles. Knock, knock, knock. Everyone looks at each other. Mother asks, "Who could that be?" The father gets up, then the mother, and then the children. Rachel is last. The father opens the door. It's Jason. Father says, "It's for you, Rachel." Rachel goes over to the door. The rest of the family heads back to the kitchen. Jason says, "Yeah, Rachel, I was wondering if you would like to hang out tonight. Maybe go to the movies?" But as she looked at him, his eyes start to get wide. They begin to change into the alien's eyes. Rachel, terrified, quickly looks back to see where her family went. She sees no sign of them. Rachel then looks back, and there is the alien standing at the door. All of a sudden, with teeth like a lion, it opens its mouth, rushes up to her, and bites her head off. Rachel is now back in her original room from the very beginning. Rachel quickly awakes from her nightmare, sits up, and starts screaming and crying. The door is cracked like before, and the lamp is on. Rachel stops screaming and starts breathing heavily. The same music from the party downstairs is playing. She grabs her head, is exhausted, and shakes her head. She's sweating heavily and looks a little sick. Rachel sits up in her bed and sneezes. She then realizes it was all a dream and is filled with extremely great relief. Rachel says, "Oh my God!" She puts her hand over her head. Rachel says, "Thank God that was just a dream." She opens the door and walks down the stairs to the party. At the party is all the people in Rachel's dream with a few extras. Jason is dancing around, having a good time, smiling. The television is on. Her older brother is sitting on the couch with Samantha. Pam, Teresa, Mr. Richardson's daughter are dancing around, having a good time. Teresa sees Rachel coming down the stairs and waves to her. Teresa says excitedly, "I see you're awake." Jason looks and sees Rachel. Jason, smiling, says, "Hi, Rachel. Are you feeling better?" Rachel smiles at him. Johnny and his two little friends are going upstairs. They walk past Rachel. Johnny, smiling, says, "Hi, Rachel." Rachel says, "Johnny, where's Mom and Dad?" Johnny says, "They're over there, playing cards." Michael, Rachel's boyfriend, walks over to Rachel. Michael, smiling, asks, "Are you feeling better? We missed you down here." Rachel, smiling, says, "Yeah, I guess." Johnny and his friends come back downstairs. Rachel and her boyfriend go over to the floor and start dancing. Rachel is smiling. Everyone is watching Rachel and her boyfriend dance, and they are happy, rooting for them. But as they dance, Rachel notices something. As she looks down, she noticed green feet, like the alien. Although it is only a blown-up balloon, she is still frightened by it. As she looked up, she noticed it looked increasingly like the alien in her dream, although it was still a plastic balloon. Then she came upon the face, and sure enough, it was the form of the alien, staring her right in the face with its big, black, shiny eyes. Rachel suddenly appears to have a heart attack. Michael asks, holding her on the shoulders, "What's wrong?" But then, as she stared at the alien, it is picked up by Johnny. Michael looks back to see the alien. He begins pointing toward it to Rachel and asks, "Is it that?" As Rachel looked, her little brother Johnny, along with his friend, picked up the enlarged, blown-up alien and took it upstairs. Her mother's playing cards and sees. Mother shouts, "Johnny, didn't I tell you to leave that upstairs?" Johnny shouts, "Yes, Mom." However, still frightened, Rachel passes out, and all the people of the party come to see what is wrong with her. Everyone is huddled over Rachel, trying to help her out. From there, we zoom out from Rachel, to above the house, and then higher up into the sky. We travel farther and farther away, into the vast reaches of the sky, and then through the stars and galaxies, through the comets and constellations, until there's total darkness. Then we reach way beyond the universe and come upon another one, and another planet, another neighborhood, another house similar to Rachel's. It is nighttime, and inside the house there is a room identical to Rachel's, and inside the room there is an inhabitant. The wind blows the white silk curtains. The inhabitant, who appears to be Rachel, suddenly awakes from the vision of herself at the party, but her face is not seen. She gets up and walks over to the window. From behind, she has the same hair as Rachel. She reaches the window and looks out. The wind blows her hair. She stands there, looking out the window, and sees the two moons in the sky. However, as we look around to see her face, it is not Rachel's face. It is the alien's. It stares out the window as the wind blows the curtains. We now zoom away from the alien, heading back to the other universe. The alien climbs out of the window and begins flying. It has angel wings towards the other universe. 6 weeks later, it is nighttime. Rachel and Michael are in a nice restaurant. Rachel is looking sharp and smiling better than she's ever been, and so is Michael. In outer space, the alien is flying like Superman through the universe at immeasurable speeds. Inside the restaurant, Mike smiles at Rachel and takes a drink of water. Michael says, "Listen to this. I heard that since the universe is infinite, all thoughts that we think exist as a reality somewhere in the universe." Suddenly, Rachel loses the smile on her face. Michael examines her and then notices what he's just done. He then begins to comfort her. "Oh no, Rachel, I didn't mean..." Rachel puts her hand up and says, "Oh no, it's fine." Michael says, "No, really." Rachel interrupts and says, "Oh no, don't worry." She then begins smiling, and Michael does as well. In Rachel's neighborhood, it is still around the same time. There, in the night sky, is the alien. It is hovering over the neighborhood. It sees Rachel's house and then flies toward it. It floats down toward the house. Inside, it is the same original house as the party, and Johnny is playing with his toys on the living room floor. His father is on the couch watching television, and his mother is pouring water into the pot of a green plant. Knock, knock, knock. The mother turns her head. The father turns his head. Johnny turns his head. Mother says, "Get the door, Johnny. It's your sister." Johnny says with a loud voice, "Okay, Mom, I'll get it." Back at the restaurant, Rachel and Michael are getting up, ready to leave. The female server comes to them. Waitress, smiling, says, "Hope you guys enjoyed your dinner. Please come again." Back at home and outside Rachel's door is the alien, with Rachel's hair and body, but with white wings and a green alien face. It stands there, waiting for someone to come to the door. It knocks again. Johnny is walking over to the door. He opens it. He sees the alien. He is shocked and startled. Alien asks, "Hi, is Rachel here?" Johnny yells, "Ah! Dad! Mom!" Johnny goes running into the house. The father gets up, and the mother starts running over to the door. The mother sees the alien standing outside the door, but keeps her distance. The moon from the sky shines just above the alien's hair as it stood in the doorway. The father then runs over to shut the door. Alien asks, "Is Rachel here?" He shuts the door. Father says, "Quick, call the police." The mother dials 911. Mother says, "Yes, there's something." Back at the restaurant, Rachel and her boyfriend are just leaving. A security guard is standing near and watches them leave. Guard says, "Hi, you guys have a nice night." Rachel and Michael smile and wave. Back at Rachel's house, the alien is still knocking on the door. The father peeks through the peek hole of the door. Johnny and the mother look out the window and see it still there. The police arrive. They surround the house and hold fire. Police shout, "Come away from the house and put your hands up." The alien turns around. They all see the face and are shocked. Alien shouts, "I'm from another planet. I'm just looking for Rachel." The alien starts flapping its wings and hovering above the ground. The police are shocked. Police shout, "Stop where you are and come down to the ground." But the alien begins hovering closer towards them. "I'm not of this world. I just want to speak to Rachel. Where is she?" Police say, "We're going to give you to the count of 3 to lie down with your hands behind your back." But the alien keeps hovering and coming closer. "I'm from another universe. I appeared within Rachel's dream where her thoughts control me, and she appeared in mine. I just want to speak with her, and I'll be going back. Where is she?" The alien says so with a growling voice. The police then start firing, but the alien does not go down. It begins flying up into the sky, into outer space, and back to its universe. Michael and Rachel are in the car pulling up to the house. They are surprised by all the police and see them looking up into the sky. They look up as well. Rachel sees as if a shooting star traveled across the sky. Rachel asks, "What's going on?" Michael says, "I don't know." They both walk up to the scene, and things are explained to them what has happened. The next morning, Rachel is at home on the living room couch. Mother is washing dishes. Mother says, "Yeah, it claimed to be from another universe. It said it wanted to speak with you." The father is also in the kitchen, reading the newspaper about the alien where it says, "Claims to be from another universe in Rachel's dream, had wings like an angel." Johnny is drinking a cup of tea. Rachel sits there on the couch pondering. Rachel then gets up and goes upstairs, disturbed by her thoughts. When she arrives in her room, like before in the beginning, She begins examining the pictures on her dresser. She then goes over and looks out the window. The wind blows the curtains and her hair. As she stares out the window, we zoom away from the neighborhood into outer space. We go past the galaxies and constellations and darkness until we reach Rachel's window in the alien universe. The wind is blowing the curtains. Someone's head comes up to the window. Like before, it's as if Rachel's looking out the window, but only her hair is seen. There are also 2 moons in the sky. The wind blows her hair. She stands there looking out the window. We look around to see her face. It is the alien's face. It hisses, staring out the window as if he planned to visit Rachel again one day. The wind blows the curtains. The end.
This has been Rachel's Dream, written by Marcus Wilson, narrated by Michelle Araya, copyright 2001 by Marcus Wilson, production copyright by Marcus Wilson.